Hey guys, how are you?
That's your cue, Alexander.
That's my cue? All right, I thought it was your cue, Olaf.
I don't have any cue at all. I'm
You
cue
don't have
free.
any cue at all. You're cue free. Well, I'm fine. Thank you for asking, Sander. It's nice being here. How are you?
I'm fine, always. And how
Always
about you,
fine.
Olaf? Always fine.
I'm fine as always. Yeah, just enjoying some time with some old-time buddies.
All right. And you know what they say about Raymond? Raymond is fine. But yeah, that's a completely different story, I guess.
Doing good. Well,
So, Alexander, you the guy that invited us.
This is kind of weird because I've invited Raymond and Sanda to be a guest in our podcast show, the Blue Screen Brothers. But for some reason we have a logo called the IT Bros, and we're in the studio for Sander and Raymond here. So this is kind of a co-host, co-setup. So we're four hosts and no attendees. Is that
It's
right?
all about the bros, right?
It's all about the bros.
it's all
Yep.
about the bros, yes.
Yeah. So this podcast episode started not virtually. It started live in Redmond, just out of Seattle, about a month ago, when Raymond and Sander and I attended the Microsoft MVP Summit for the Microsoft MVPs in 2024. And of course, when I see Raymond and Sander, I always want to cry because I'm happy, not sad. But
Oh, I thought it had a different reason, but okay.
it had a different reason. All right.
Yeah, we are some
No,
crying anyway. So
too many memories. We walked too well. It's going down memory lane. But
Yeah.
I figured that all right. I need to figure out what these two bros are up to when I don't talk to them during conferences. Because although Olaf and I live in Norway in Bergen, and you guys live in the Netherlands, we don't talk that much on a day-to-day basis. But we talk very frequently. I think I talk to you guys more than I speak to my general family.
Oh,
But
that's okay. That's okay. I used to spend more hotel room nights in a year with Raymond than with my own family.
I will not
That's the
ask.
level. That's the level where you really want to rethink your life choices, I guess.
is that why he was so fine?
Let's not go there.
You got it. But it is fun, right? Because we see each other at conferences, and I know Raymond and I, we've been to Norway. We've been to Norway a couple of times to Oslo for the Nordic Infrastructure Conference.
Yeah.
I've been to my customer in Stockholm and met with MVPs there. I've been to a European SharePoint conference in Copenhagen. But you guys have visited the Netherlands quite a lot too, right?
We aren't invited. That's on you guys.
Yeah.
You aren't invited for Experts Live Netherlands, the original Experts Live, the OG.
Actually, my last time was at Tech Ed Amsterdam way back. Then I did some speaking together with what was his the Insider program, the Windows Step program, the start of the Insider program. So
The Springboard
Steven.
program.
Stephen
Yeah.
Rose, yeah. So
Cool.
Yeah, we shook hands with Steven while we were in Redmond as well. Yep. He drove by in his convertible sports car and noticed
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess everybody noticed us when we were in Redmond. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Not a lot of people cry. But you're forgiven about that, Alex.
That's what get the attention. There's a guy standing there crying
in a corner, right?
in a corner.
And we just hug you and say, it's not that bad with Windows. Don't worry.
Don't go there. Don't go there. No.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
But so back to Seattle or Redmond, I said we should do a show. But what should we talk about? Because we now have 4 MVPs, 4 different, specialty topics. So we have security MVPs, we have Azure, we have Windows and devices, and we have Raymond, which is just MVP for MVPs.
The real MVP.
The real MVP. So
who's the Azure MVP then?
Me.
All right.
Sure. Yeah. I think I have in my it's 15 years, I think, I have had 11 different categories. So,
Yeah.
so jack of all trades.
I think I'm now at 4. Yeah. I used to be directory services. That was mainly just to keep people's beer for them. Then I was enterprise mobility, but I didn't sell any phones. Then it became security, and now I'm both security and Windows and devices.
Yeah. I started with Windows setup MVP, so deployment specialist. So that was quite fun. And when that program was cancelled, I went over to a Windows MVP, and they just drove me an Office MVP at the same time. So yeah, so it's because it was running on a Windows, right? So yeah.
Because you had to set it up as well, on Windows.
Yeah, right. So yeah.
What I got to ask here, Sander, what did you do wrong? Because you are a security MVP and a Windows and devices MVP, and you don't need Windows. They don't have devices on Mac. And I've heard everyone say you don't need any security on Macintosh.
And yeah,
Isn't
you're
that what
asking
they
me
say?
that. I don't have a
Yeah.
MacBook. Ray's the one with the MacBook here. Ray's
Raise the MacBook.
Well, it used to be, so Raymond used to be Windows and devices for ITBro, I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
No, Windows and devices for IT.
Yeah,
And then I remember thinking, because I was Windows and devices for IT as well, I was like, hold on, what else would you use Windows and devices for except for IT? So, because we don't clean glasses, we don't do window shopping or anything like that. So that became Windows and devices. And Ray is the one with the MacBook here. Yeah.
I'll ask Shansi to see if we can do something about that.
Well, we can do a review of the new Surface.
We could do a review of the new Surface. Just see if we could get a hold of the new Surface first. That could be an interesting task.
Yeah.
But something that I figure touches everyone's era, and it doesn't matter if you are Windows and devices, if you are Azure, or if you're security, because Entra, the identity, is the key to everything.
Yeah.
You need an identity to sign into even a MacBook, and you need an identity to use all the Azure stuff and the cloud stuff. So, Sander, can you come from the top of your head anything that don't need an identity?
Nope. I think everything in IT needs an identity.
Everything
Because
needs an identity. So
yeah, if you don't have an identity, how can you audit stuff? How can you log stuff? How can you make sure that something that happened can be correlated to someone doing anything, doing anything good or doing anything harmful?
I remember good old days with Windows 95. If you didn't remember your password, you just pressed cancel, and then you got in and could run anything anyway. So yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Windows 98 and Windows ME did the same thing. There was a Linux bug, I think, a year ago, that if you, I think it was pressing the spacebar or the escape button at a certain speed, you would also you also didn't have to log on. Yeah, good stuff.
The good old days. Yeah.
The good old days. Yeah, if you want to. So I guess if you want to experience the good old days, you now have to run Linux, Olaf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to happen quite soon, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because you're an Azure MVP, so you also use Azure Sphere, right?
Yeah. So,
and that's Linux. So yeah.
So yeah, but I'm not personally going to install Linux on anything.
No, of course not. Of course not. We delegate that stuff. We delegate that stuff. It's the same question that I had with colleagues about, I think it was about 8 years ago, something like that. And I asked them the question, so what do you really want to do? And this is a very tied in question. So it's not that Ray would answer anything like sharing hotel rooms or anything like that. No, I asked the question, what do you want to do? What do you guys want to do? You want to install ADFS for customers, or do you want to troubleshoot ADFS for customers? So yeah, I think anybody can install Linux. You can just delegate that stuff, but troubleshooting Linux, that's quite a feat.
Yeah.
Or BSD, or what does macOS run? Oh yeah, BSD runs on BSD. Yeah.
I always challenge a Mac user with one question, and I ask, how many gigabytes of memory do your Mac have? and I get a reply, and I said, have you ever tried using all of it? Because that's a very interesting cap once you start to utilize everything in the memory. So I challenge you, Ray, see if you can fill up the memory.
Of my
Right now, while recording.
Well, preferably, preferably
I'm
never.
currently
But
running Windows, so don't worry.
Yeah.
This is not my Mac.
Yeah. But also, so Raymond and I discussed this topic, I think a couple of weeks ago, because Apple was still selling 8 gigabyte MacBooks.
They are still.
And they are still, with M2. Do they still do it with the M3 processor? I think only with M2.
They still do it.
With M3 still? Wow. And what you have to know is that in a Windows PC, you just claw that thing open and you press in another memory unit and you've got 64 gigs, just like that. But in a MacBook, the RAM is actually on the chip. So if you want to
Surface.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
it's a hassle. You cannot expand the RAM on a MacBook.
there are some caveats which creates challenging spheres for modern devices. But what is probably a bigger concern is that they have all of the security keys in all of the security chips. So once you start to dig down and realize that you need to de-encrypt a disk, well, you might find some cumbersome details that make it hard to kind of unlock a disk on a Mac. But the point is that take backup, use a cloud service, don't lose your data on an encrypted Mac disk, because there are some licenses that might give you some headache. So, but I don't think that we should punish Apple too much on that, because this is rather common on many of the vendors nowadays. So
Mhm.
you have more and more system on a chip. You have more and more security built in. Olav and I have been talking about the Microsoft Pluton, so the security CPU built into Microsoft's own CPUs, which is also being presented at some of the AMD CPUs.
Yep.
And we see that more and more of the vendors are going to a very integrated and closed circuit. So many PCs, you can't really expand memory either as well. But so don't hold out against Apple. It's just we can all say it's a security feature, but we know that there's more to it.
But the big question here is Entra running on a Mac, since you are going over to the Mac when we are talking about Entra?
I don't know. I don't have a Mac. What about you, Raymond? Can you sign into a Mac with Entra ID?
No, actually, you sign in on a Mac with a local identity, pure local identity.
That's so 90s.
Well, it's not really 90s. It's like your mobile phone. It's like any personal device that you currently use.
It's like Windows 8, to be honest.
Maybe.
You just kind of tanked my 90s reference with a not that successful reference.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
like
Windows
like-
8.1 update 1, because that is still that's not supported either. But that was kind of successful, kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you log into your on device identity with your Mac, but can you connect the Mac to Entra ID? Because that's been a challenge on Active Directory to kind of secure and lock down and manage devices that's not Windows and printers. but there have been some ways to include other devices as well. But how is that done with Mac devices?
Well, actually, it works pretty simple. What I use Edge everywhere. So what I first do is that I install Edge on my MacBook, then create a profile with my Entra ID, and then I start using Entra, and it just works.
You know, I've heard that joke before, and that is Safari is only good to download Edge. No, wait. It's the first time I get it on recording that someone only used Safari to download Edge. I like that. All right, thank you.
But it's actually one of the main messages here is that with Entra you can use any devices, because you just need something that can authenticate to whatever you are going to use Entra to authenticate against. And most thing today is something web browser related, right?
Exactly.
Or something cloud related is the right thing to say, because it's not a web thing anymore. It's APIs we are going to use. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's funny because if you have the right APIs, then it doesn't matter where you stick your FIDO2 key in; it will just work to authenticate you. Yeah. Or your passkey.
Well,
coming up. Yep.
Passkeys.
Yeah. And are there some of the elements of Entra that have any basics of the security? So when you talk about Entra, it's a catalog service, and you use it to authenticate application, users, devices, APIs. But are there any security basics that people should be considering when you're doing Entra?
I think so. Yeah, and Raymond and I have actually presented on those because I think that one of the big things that you really want to shut down on is the ability for users to just consent to apps. And we've seen malicious apps now using the same names as legit apps. We see Microsoft partners, so verified publishers, being used as the publishers for apps, so that they get that blue tick. Then, of course, we've seen attackers abuse multi-tenant app with toxic combinations of API permissions, and not just Graph API, but any other API that you can use and elevate towards global admin like that. So yeah, you don't want to have to rely on any user in your organization making the right choices all the time. But you have the admin consent workflows, so you can just stop them in the tracks. And if they really, really, really think the application is really, really, really needed for their productivity, then they can ask an admin nicely to add that application to the tenant. So yeah,
So what you're saying is that you should not let everyone be a local admin in the cloud. They shouldn't be able to install applications. That's basically what we've done.
Yeah. And if you go one further, you no longer want your global admins to become local admins on all Entra joint devices either.
Nope.
But that's now in preview for 1 week. So yeah, it's all those common things that we say, wow, geez, shouldn't we have had that for like the last 10 years that we now have Entra ID and Azure AD and Windows Azure AD, which is what it was called first. But yeah, slowly, I guess we're getting there.
I think that is probably one of the biggest cumberstones when it comes to Windows, is that they need to support all the legacy applications. So it's no secret, Microsoft have big customers. So they have most of the Fortune 500 companies are customers of multiple Microsoft products. The multiple government instances are customers of Microsoft, running application that was around when dinosaurs used to wander the planet. So many of those aren't application. It's Olav sitting in the basement trying to make fire by jumping two stones together.
Yeah, we were talking about dinosaurs, right? I was just
yeah, it's old stuff, and they need certain Windows 98 touch and go way to authenticate and to run. So you need to have a consistency in the user API on Windows. So removing those privileges isn't that easy as people might think. So just kicking out the admin privileges, or even the way you said that, how you could remove those admin rights for global admins, isn't that easy, because you need to take in consideration what you're going to break. So if you have 1 billion devices running a instance of Windows, and let's say that 100 million of those is connected to Entra ID, connected directly to Entra ID, you will break application if you don't think what you're doing. So it's really hard to make those big changes, but we're getting there. And what's one of the biggest changes in Entra ID that you've really been looking forward to the last couple of months?
Well, looking forward to is maybe a bit hard to say, but we're currently entering the era where we have to leave the Microsoft modules for what is called Azure AD and Microsoft Online.
Yep, and Azure AD Preview. Yep,
The MSOL?
Yes, MSOL.
the MS Online
and-
module. Yep.
Yeah. And now we have to enter the new era of using the Microsoft Graph API. And that
Yep,
comes
and
with
the
some
Graph API
challenges.
PowerShell SDK. We no longer get modules. We now have an entire SDK for what it's worth.
SDK for IT pros.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Developer tools in Windows for IT
developer
pros.
tools in Windows. So you mentioned that you and Raymond had a presentation on that, and you did some stuff. Why don't you take that back a notch and give us a view of what you've been doing for the last couple of months in Entra ID?
All right, so let's start with the time frame sheet, Ray, because I think that's the perfect way to start talking about this, because we're now all talking about the old modules going away, but of course it's not just the modules that go away. The entire plumbing. This is not the sheet that I was talking about. It's an Entra suite. I know. Yeah, so this is the one. It has a Dutch title, but I guess it doesn't really matter. And what we're seeing is that we all started with the Active Directory authentication libraries, the ADL, and then we got the Msol just in December 2018. So it's just been 4 years. Then also we had the Azure AD Graph API and the Microsoft Graph API. I'm not talking about the API that Entra Connect, previously known as Azure AD Connect, uses, because that's another API that is moving away towards using the Microsoft Graph API as well. But what we're seeing is that the MS Online module, the Azure AD Preview module, and the Azure AD module, those are modules that are just like 8 years old. So yeah, it's no wonder that they have to go away. Then we had the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK version 1. We've had that for like 3.5 years, but that's going away as well, because now we have an SDK version 2, and the beta SDK is actually splitting off now. And this is the way that Microsoft has tried, at least, to get us all in the Cloud Shell, in the Azure portal, to actually be able to use the Graph PowerShell SDK instead of the modules, because, well, the V1 module is just like a gig, and the V2 SDK is like 450 megs if you install every module. You don't have to, but you can. And in Cloud Shell, of course, you want the entire module. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why the normal SDK and the beta SDK are now split in two. And it's been almost a year now, and I hope most people have now upgraded their PowerShell SDK modules, versions. Yeah, I don't even know how to say it. Yeah, like a team, right?
I think you have updated it, but many people are still on running old script, because it takes some time to update all your script that's are based on a Graph API or
Yep.
Azure AD module and Preview module and so on. So it's pretty messy when you look into the scripts.
Yeah, and I mentioned that in a public blog post about a couple of weeks ago, and everybody kept telling me, but it's simple and you can do it. And I'm like, yeah, well, I have one script in my book that targets Entra ID. In the book, it's still called Azure ID, but you can't rename stuff in printed dead trees, I guess. Or at least that's what the publisher tells me. And I changed it up in 2022 to use the version 1 of the Graph PowerShell SDK, and I was like, I think it took me like 4 days, because we didn't have the Graph X-ray yet. We didn't have other tools yet. I had a really nice PowerShell MVP from Serbia helping me out, and still it took me a couple of days to get it into the PowerShell SDK from the Azure AD module. So yeah, it's hard.
And you don't know for how long this will last, because they are implementing new features, new APIs, new commandlets. They are now public that they want you to use the graph APIs. So there's no secret there. But then again, Windows Phone was also something that was here to stay. And then there was Windows Phone 8 and 10, and we all know what happened. So it's kind of expensive to write application scripts and write to those APIs. And unless you're certain that that this is your main time job, writing scripts, keeping up to date to these APIs, you're either thankful for all the help you can get, or you really need a co-pilot to help you kind of convert.
Yeah.
So they kind of upsell their own products. I feel that changing these APIs is not only a cleanup for Microsoft themselves, it's really an upsell for their co-pilot products.
And Copilot starts at, what is the monthly price where it starts at? I think like
Your firstborn son.
Yeah, probably. Yep. For the first month. Yep.
And I think my biggest guilt is that my script tool is something I use every now and then. And when you figure out that I should do something, I know I have the script, and then you sit down with the script and you are going to run it now, then you rather install the old module just to be finished and forget to modernize your script, right? Because it's running once every 6 or 8 months, and then you don't want to do too much work to get it working, right?
Yeah, and I know, because most scripts that we use, they use get statements anyway. So if it doesn't work, or if it breaks, well, you don't get the information, but at least you can't break anything with get statements. Well, unless you're running Active Directory at a bank at a Friday afternoon, and you're doing some heavy lifting, yeah, that will get you in the local news. Yeah.
Olaf, where do you work?
I don't know.
No. This was actually me, but it was fun. We were trying to discover nested groups 17 levels deep. So a group that is a member of a group, there's a member of a group, there's a member of a group, 16 times, and then back to the top. So yeah, we were doing a lot of get statements towards the main controllers, and when one became slow, we just targeted another and another, because that's just in the way PowerShell works. And all of a sudden, we had all their domain controllers brought to their knees. Yeah, good stuff. But in Entra ID, it's a cloud. It automatically scales. There's unlimited scale, except when you're running in West Europe, and it is a hassle. Yeah, they're building it now, by the way. They're expanding the West Europe region. We can drive past it on the highway, not far from here, and you'll see that there's a new building now being planted. But you shouldn't be able to bring it to the news. So from a security point of view, and if we're looking at that shared responsibility, then I feel what's most important when you reuse someone else's script, that you at least look a bit at the way you authenticate. And that's typically Entra, because even AWS and GCP use it in a completely different way. But and Ray has a slide on this. There's a couple of ways that you can authenticate to Entra ID as a person or as a script. And I think it's good to know the possibilities there, what Microsoft recommends, and also what Microsoft doesn't recommend you to do anymore. Because they used to have the client secrets, and everybody would just use the client secret to authenticate. But a client secret is not that. Well, it's not that secret, actually. It's just more like a password. And they did a nice thing that once you said it and you copied it over, Entra wouldn't show it anymore. But the client secret still I think if you do it with PowerShell in the portal, you can't do it anymore. In the portal, a client secret can only live for up to 2 years, and I think that's a fair statement. But yeah, it's not the way you should do things. I think certificate authentication is the way you want to use your scripts. And if you're really a bigger organization, then I think you can use Workload Identity Federation. If you use DevOps and things like that, where Workload Identity Federation is already there, then you can use that.
A scary thing about the client secret is on your old stuff, I think it was default to 2199 or something like that. So you have some time to misuse that secrets.
Yeah.
Start to clean up old secrets with expiry more than 2 years, just to make sure that you don't have too many bad secrets laying around. So
and please don't insert client secrets in your code. Use Key Vault for that. And just jiggle Key Vault in a certain way to get that client secret instead of just pasting it into the code.
And just for those who are curious, the Key Vault is kind of obvious if you've done any of the Azure exams. So what you're using for and what it is, but for those who aren't steady on Key Vault, what would you explain a Windows and device guy? What is a Key Vault?
Oh, Key Vault is just like an HSM.
I wouldn't call it an HSM. I just would call it a password manager.
Yeah, KeePass.
KeePass in the cloud.
It's a password database in the cloud.
Yeah.
You can lock it down such that only certain identities can enter it.
Sounds like an HSM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nobody knows what an HSM is.
I'm sorry, I'm the security MVP on the call.
Yeah.
So the thing I really like about the Key Vault is that you can make sure that only a certain set of people can use keys, but they don't get access to see what the key indeed is. So it's really the best of everything. So you can have both those who can publish keys, create keys, manage keys, view keys, but you can delegate those who can use them but never know what they are.
You need to remember it's not only user, it's also service principals, right? So the applications can get them themselves, so you don't need to apply them to users. You would have a pipeline with a deployment that actually get them for you. So it's not a user thing normally.
Yeah. Nobody gets to see it.
Yeah, but it can still be abused. So what if we want to apply conditional access policies to AppRex or identity federated workloads and things like that? Right. Well, here's Microsoft to the rescue. You can now have a workload identity premium license per AppRex or per workload federated identity for I think it's just like $3 a month per managed identities as well. So yeah, Microsoft got your back.
I just wonder, Sandra, do you ever get the feeling that when you ask a Microsoft representative a question that, how do you solve this problem? And they automatically figure, if we only add premium after the word we already have launched, so Teams Premium, Intune Premium, something Premium, they solve your problems right away.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, but the interesting discussion that I had with Microsoft people lately was that everything feels like Windows XP Service Pack 2. You wanted me to explain it to a Windows guy, right? Everything in Entra feels like Windows XP Service Pack 2. It's wide open. Now we have a service pack, we have new insights, and we have a solution for you to change it. And as admin, just figure it out if Service Pack 2 messes things up for you, if it breaks stuff. But this is where we're going. And you've got an X amount of time to change it. And I'm like, why don't we just start off with secure settings straight off the bat? Why isn't every feature that Microsoft introduces secure by design, perhaps even? And the reason, and this is funny because I've had someone talk to me and say, well, this is not even a public secret or anything. We can talk about this. but it has to do with the culture at Microsoft. And it's funny because when I learned about this aspect of Microsoft culture, it actually explained so much to me and explained why we have the widget board on Windows and why we have all those other things that suck, but that people think are crazy useful, and then they just stay in Windows or they go away, like WordPad, for instance. But yeah, so how does that work? And obviously, it is secure by design, but when you're a principal program manager at Microsoft, your job is to look 2 years in the future and see and know what customers want. And I think, well, for me at least, but perhaps for everyone on this call, it's really hard to say with any kind of certainty what people would want in 2 years' time. Of course, Henry Ford has this great soundbite that says, if I asked my customers what they would have wanted in the future, they would say faster or better horses. Instead, he created the electric car. So it's not just, we ask developers, what do you want in 2 years? I want it to compile twice as fast. I want twice as fast CPUs, and I need 4 times more memory. That doesn't solve anything. So as a principal program manager, you really have to go and look at what do Entra customers need in 2 years' time. And then you start building it. And then you have a version 1, and we all know version 1s. Version 1s, they're either restricted to the US, like the Zoom, and then ROW, rest of the world gets it or doesn't get it. It doesn't have any delegated permissions. It's not multi-language, which is important because even this call is multi-language, but we all use English. Why not? And of course, it doesn't have rich auditing, but it is a version 1. And then Microsoft puts that version 1 on in the production environment and tries to explain to us why it's the best thing since sliced bread. The reason why is because the principal program manager and the program manager that was responsible for the feature, they have their entire rest of their career almost hanging on a thread of the adoption of that feature. So what drives adoption? Well, non-security drives adoption. If there's as little barriers as possible, adoption will be bigger than if you, well, for Copilot, you need to do data classification and stuff like that. Well, Microsoft isn't telling us that. There's MVPs telling us that. Microsoft is just telling us, well, Copilot for security is the best thing since sliced bread. So yeah, they want to drive adoption because if you can prove that what you thought of 2 years ago or 3 years ago would be good, and actually people start using it and it is popular, and all the MVPs are saying, well, this is great stuff, then you get the go-ahead for a version 2 or version 3. And even then, of course, with Microsoft Band, there's no version 3. It can still fail miserably. Windows Phone, of course, after 3 version, it can still explode in your face, but at least you had some sort of objective measure, namely adoption, telemetry, that you can use to say, well, I've done great stuff at Microsoft. And yeah, that's how it works. So yeah, then in a version 2, version 3, security is added because that's what the enterprises ask for. After you have all your customers already popped with insecure settings and things like that, and enterprises paying attention say, whoa, we have to disable, what's this called? NLMR. Oh, gee, I don't even know what this abbreviation stands for. Well, we need to disable this in Windows right now. Yeah, that's what the cybersecurity vendors have been telling us for the last, 6 years. And now there's a poisoning attack. Now everybody does it. And of course, in the next version of Windows 11, what will be that? Moment 6, I think. Yeah, of course, it will be disabled by default. Like SMB v1 was disabled in Windows Server 2019, famously. Like NTLM v1 is perhaps disabled by default in Windows Server 2025. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, it's things like that. And NTLM has a very special place in my heart. But yeah, I guess that's another story.
It's fun you mentioned those things because a lot of the security aspects around Entra ID is security. So just as a basic, yes, we are now sure that you are Sundar. Just a catalog service, that's not that heavy lifting. But the security elements within Entra ID is the core functionality. But not only have they kind of put that piece of bread into the different box, they have indeed put a different price on them as well. So many of the security features isn't just only added on the top of Entra ID. You need either Entra ID Premium 1 or Premium 2, just for instance, as risky users and risky sign-ins and the privileged identity management. And one of the weirdest stuff is that they always talk about zero trust. They always talk about just enough access, and they talk about just in time. So just enough and just in time. So JIT and Zero. But in order to achieve those, you need the most fancy license product they
No,
have.
you need just enough licenses, right? So, because someone in the product team stupidly said a couple of years ago that and promised there will never be a premium P3 license. Then for Azure AD, for Entra, there will never be a P3 license. And so, yeah, even though Microsoft now has P3 functionality, they can't do a P3 license because, we promised we would never do that.
Nope.
So now there's a new identity governance license
Yeah.
for stuff that was previously in P2 that is now lifted out into that license. And then, of course, we have the Workload Identity premium license. So, yeah, what will they think of next? Well, the entire thought of Entra was like a suite, as you saw the slide. Sweet, dude. Sweet, dude. What does mine say? Sweet. What does mine say? Dude. So, yeah, we'll probably see a premium suite and then a premium suite P2. And then they can have a premium suite P3 somewhere in 2037, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they do a lot of merging and splitting of functionalities. And Olav, I think you saw here the just a couple of weeks ago a feature that they merged from two different SKUs for $2 each.
Yeah, you had in Defender for Cloud, you have the container and one of the other licenses related to container. They were $2 each, so they figure out let's put them together and require $7 instead. So that's 2 plus 2 is 7. That's easy math.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yep.
no new feature, just the same, but you just have to have one license instead of, or turn it on one place instead of two. So that's worth $3, I guess.
Yeah, and yet, it's. I always when I hear stuff like that, I think, but hold on, Steve Ballmer no longer works for Microsoft. How is 2 plus 2 still 7? Because I knew that was the case like 10 years ago, right? But it's yeah, but your admins need less work configuring it now. So that amounts to something.
It's worth it
every month.
Yeah. So
yeah,
and that's the sad thing also, is that a lot of the new security features are free to begin with. And then you start to use them and you rely on them and you love them, and suddenly you get the bill sticked on you. So, and your manager say, no way that we're going to use this amount of money, but hey, we need it. So
there's even companies now that ban private and public previews for that reason.
Yeah, we never run anything in preview anymore, and tell Microsoft every time they contact us they want to try to test it out, and okay, I can test it out, but I want the price agreement before I start testing it out.
Yep.
So because I want to know what it costs to be an addict of the new features. Yeah.
To be one of the Blue brothers. Yeah, the Blue brothers. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I like the way they just announced the pricing for Microsoft Copilot for security.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
we
think
already heard.
I think Alex isn't far off with Firstborn. Yeah.
I like that so much. First it was like $4 per SKU per hour, and we were all wondering what is a SKU. Well, that's a security compute unit.
Yep.
And what is that? Yes.
Exactly.
How
And
many
now-
do I need?
Well,
now they
Microsoft
announced,
recommends
well,
4.
If you want to use it, we're expecting you to at least use one SKU 24/7, 365 days per year. So please first pay us $35,040. Then you can start using it.
Yeah, and I really don't I really don't agree with that, because this year is a leap year. So we really have to use the 366, not 365, right?
We get
It's
one
also
day for free.
Well, you get 1 day for free, or like we saw last leap year with Microsoft 365, you get a 1 day outage. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
I think
But it's
the
also
leap
fun
year-
that they had if you have more SKUs and you don't use both SKU, it will roll over to the next day, but only 1 day. So if you have paid for 10 SKUs, you can have and use one, will have 19 the next day, but then they are gone. So it's they try to make it sounds better, but yeah, I think
Yep.
they need
very
to do
interesting
something.
pricing
Yeah.
model.
It's even like every now and then I enter a fun company, and it's just like, well, what do you want for dinner? What do you want to do for fun? And they find up a board game, and it doesn't matter what board game it is. It could be Ticket to Ride, it could be checkers, it could do whatever. But every now and then I wonder, how do they come up with all these new games? Where are they sitting? And I wonder, do they work at the licensing department at Microsoft? Because it's like we have monthly SKUs and we have all of these different ways of billing. And I kind of recall that there are some new features that require you to put up new services. And it's just like, how do they make up these things?
Keeps you wondering.
Yep.
Well, at least we won't get bored, and we will keep work.
It's interesting because I know the guy that came up with the original licensing for Azure AD Premium P2. His name is Msol. He's a Greek Microsoft employee. And yes, he's a bit crazy in the head. Yeah, I think so. He's great to party with. So yeah, I guess that's where it comes from. Yeah, those party bills need to be paid, right?
Yeah.
I remember the first time that this year, 2024, that I figured that why did they have to do this was Microsoft have now released the Microsoft 365 backup. So you can finally have backup of your documents and emails in our Microsoft 365, but you don't need to set up a Azure subscription to ensure the billing. You need to set up a Syntax subscription. So you need to set up a Syntax solution. So why didn't they
agree with the Syntax product outline and requirements and things like that? Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how they try to make people adopt a new way of consumption and billing. To see, I wonder if this is something that people were requiring 2 years ago, and they're trying to track the adoption and see how many people are now signing up for Syntax.
Yeah. So if you want to let Microsoft know to stop doing that kind of tricks, just don't adopt it.
Yeah.
I would like our listeners, both in the Netherlands, in Norway, and pretty much everywhere else. So if there were one thing I could ask for anyone watching this video is who have stopped applying for Microsoft 365 backup just because you needed to set up a Syntax. Who were trying to set this up and they saw Syntax. Well, I'll stick with Veeam or whatever I have from already.
I have one customer that I know about that actually started with a Microsoft backup and quite fast figure out that we cannot afford this, so we just do something else because we like our money. We would like to get some part of it at least. So,
Yeah.
So
going bankrupt on backup. Now we haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy on ransomware, yeah, of course. But it's a strange thing because most organizations still think that backing up and restore and being able to restore VMs is everything they need to know because Microsoft 365 is software as a service, right? And if I set it up correctly, I'll have 500 previous versions of documents, or at least 491.9. and I have all these other things that are in staff delete, and I have recycle bins and things like that. Why do I even need backup? Well, guess what? If you have Active Directory and you've set it up wrong, you've synchronized your admins, or you haven't, and you still run the default settings for Entra Connect, then what you'll see happening is that an adversary will just create a user with the same user principal name as an admin account in Entra ID, and then set a password on that account in Active Directory, and then have a password for that account in Entra ID, because it would then just get synced up like that. And if there's synced users, if you already popped Active Directory, and if it's synced, then you've popped Entra ID as well. And the first thing they do, obviously, is run a script, probably PowerShell. With the new modules, probably not, but okay. But they run a script, and they will disable the, or at least not disabled, because you could see that. But what they do is they'll change the previous version settings to 1 or 2, and then just encrypt the file twice and be done with it too. So that all happens. If there's all kinds of mitigating features in the platform that you have control of as an admin, then an adversary can disable those controls. So that's why immutable storage from a storage account in Azure is so awesome, because if you create backups there, as an admin, you cannot delete something from the Azure storage account if there's still immutable data in it, and you actually cannot reconfigure or delete the Azure storage account either if there's still things in there that are within the immutable retention period. So just make sure that your backups are encrypted, buddies. Because if you look at adversaries, right? If you look at what they're doing right now, and it's I guess they call it the triple play approach. But if you're being sarcastic, you can also call it the triple pay approach. Because what they do is they'll actually encrypt your data and ask you ransom to decrypt it, or for the decryption key. Then, of course, they first siphoned off all your data to one of their own cloud storage accounts. And let me tell you, as an admin, I'm always very happy to copy data from Azure storage and not from on-prem storage, because on-prem storage is absolutely so slow most of the times. So give me cloud storage and I'll just get all that stuff over in record time. And that way, because I have your data, I can ransom you another time, so that I will not make your data, your organizational data, your contracts and things like that publicly available. And once I get that payment, I now go after all your individual customers and tell them, well, if you don't want your data with that company publicly exposed, you have to pay me a ransom as well. So they can get paid triple.
That was what happened at a hospital or healthcare institution in Finland. So I think everyone who would like to not get their nose into dirty business should take a look at the incident in Finland, where very high and senior politicians were exposed this way. So I think that protecting your data and encrypting your data is quite an elementary piece of this puzzle. You guys mentioned that you were seeing some nasty applications, so they were imposing to be official and legitimate web applications. So Olav and Marius have been at the Blueskin Brothers have been talking about enterprise app and enterprise registration apps, but are there any last words on what you should take a look at when it comes to the Entra applications and security management of those applications in Entra ID?
So what we learned from the Midnight Blizzard attacks on Microsoft is that there's some combinations of API permissions that could lead to privilege escalation when it is a malicious app or in a supply chain breach. Supply chain attack. Yep. So you really want to make sure that applications that have these typical toxic combinations, that you actually talk to the vendor, for instance, to make sure that those combinations are no longer required for the app. And yes, I have opened a forum post with Veeam for one of their products recently.
So are you actually telling us to talk to people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
probably the first security barrier that there is. Talking to vendors, talking to customers. This is the most insane idea I've heard the entire year, because when someone is calling from a company that tries to sell me stuff, well, the first thing I should start doing is to ask, do you really need to read write all?
Oh yeah. Do you
Oh,
really
yeah.
need domain admin? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and what you'll see is that Microsoft has done this for SMB1. They created a clearinghouse. They're doing the same thing with NTLM. So applications that still require NTLM to work, just a public shaming list on a Microsoft website. And I think that it should be good if there's a public shaming list from someone reputable to list all the bad apps as well. Yeah, let's start with Entra apps, because that's the future. Active Directory we can probably leave behind somewhere after 2035 for all organizations. But yeah, Entra apps, that should be something that we can work on. Yeah,
Just 10 more years of Active Directory.
just 10 more years. Yeah, just a version 3.
One of the biggest problems with Entra apps is that they are not cleaned up automatically
Yep.
in any
That's
way.
the big
So
problem.
you
Yep.
will have them there, and they will have the access. And if you have a bad secret living to 2199, then somebody actually into
Well, it is even
99.
worse, Olaf. So in some tenants, older tenants, I think a tenant needs to be at least 8 years old. If you look at the enterprise applications, there's Wunderlist there. And Wunderlist.com is no longer something that Microsoft owns, even, I think. So yeah, Microsoft should have cleaned that up, and a malicious actor could actually use that domain name to do a supply chain attack to a lot of older Entra tenants. Yeah, including the ones from Fortune 500 companies. Definitely, yeah. Also, a lot of test and development tenants that nobody ever looks at anymore. But yeah, just like Microsoft doesn't look at all their development and test tenants, right? So it shouldn't be a problem then,
No
right?
problem at all.
No problem at all.
So wrapping things up, there's enough to look after.
Yeah.
I really, really believe that neither of those listening to this call or joining this call will be out of work, at least this year.
So you cannot promise me anything for next year, Alexander?
No, that's going to be so. For those joining in, I will have a co-pilot for Alex, and the module is going to be called Olav. So I might replace Olav next year. Yeah.
But if you're listening and you work at a software company and you require domain admin for your application to run, you might be out of business within a year. If you use global admin rights or request local admin right as a consultant, you'll probably be out of business in about a year. If you think global admin rights are human rights, get out before I hurt you, I guess. And if you have apps that allow supply chain attacks, then, well, probably not in the first year, but I guess in the next 3 years, you would probably be a victim of a supply chain attack and probably be blamed, probably even sued by some bigger companies that you've offered your services to. So yeah, be warned.
You've hereby been warned, and I don't think I want to go in a fist fight with Sander. I'm not going to mention why I'm crying still, but that's might be.
No, I've shared this in many presentations with Raymond as well. And I usually bring my book and I say, well, if you do stupid shit, what you'll get is my book. It's like this thick. And then I ask pretty silently, in your name, because I will hit you with the book. Yep, and you are not allowed to keep it after that. Nope. But you will get my book against you. Yep.
All right, guys.
I guess we can round up by saying that you will have some old shit that need to be cleaned up, and you have some new shit that need to be secured.
Yeah.
True.
Like always.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Olaf, a typical system administrator at an organization with Active Directory and Entra ID, what percentage of his, her, or their time do you think they should be spending on cleaning up, on decommissioning things, on removing stale objects and things like that? What kind of percentage?
They should be 0 because it should be automated, but probably they will use like me. I use 30 to 40% of my time to clean up stuff because I tell everybody that I'm an Azure janitor because that's the main my main working day. So yeah.
So what do you think, Alex?
Janitor is probably very accurate because that's what we do. We move data from one storage facility to another, from on-prem to cloud, from Azure to Google and back. I think that a lot of companies use way too little time on cleaning up stuff. They should have spent more. Like Olaf said, he spent about 30 to 40% of his time cleaning up stuff. I think a lot of companies spend maybe a day or two a year trying to clean up, while you should be doing iterations. So we should start to take a look at all those old Windows Server logs strategies. So looking at server logs every Tuesday, looking at old crap every Thursday.
I think one of the biggest lies that if you build it, you run it, because they just build it and leave it. So they never clean up and never do maintenance. So we
and
need
there is a person at Microsoft who is responsible for SMB v1. There's a person responsible for NTLM v1. They're two different people, and they're both not happy.
Nope.
They think they have a shitty job. They want to change the world, but they can't really. Yep.
They do.
Yeah. All right. So spend more time cleaning up, less time building up, and see if you can find those offenders and especially those nasty applications that might have snuck in under your nose.
Yep. Good advice.
Good advice. Right. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really interesting podcast.
Yeah. Let's try it again sometime.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
See you around.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.